Welcome, everyone. The event is now live. Chris, please take it away.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Chris Paoli, editor, and I am pleased to be moderating our first session as well as welcoming you to today's Digital Transformation in 2022 Summit, brought to you by Amarantis, A10 Networks, and Red Hat. The editorial staff of Virtualization and Cloud Review, RedmondMag.com, CureAI.com, AWSinsider.net, MCPMag.com, and ADTMag.com have worked hard to bring together some of the best independent experts on this topic for this event. So we really hope you enjoy it. Before we start today's event with these three great sessions, we do have some announcements. First, we wanted to let you know that this event is being recorded and will be available for future viewing. You'll receive an email when the replay is available, generally within the next few days. Each of today's three sessions will be followed by a 5 to 10 minute Q&A, so please be sure to put your questions into the Q&A area of your console as they come up so we can get them answered for you by our experts. During today's third session, we will be giving away our Oculus Quest 2 virtual reality headset, but you must be present to win, so be sure to stay on for the entire event. Finally, we do have resources from our sponsors available on the consoles right now, so please download and check those out. It's because of Amarantis, A10 Networks, and Red Hat's underwriting of this content that we can bring you this summit. So we thank them for sponsoring the summit and supporting the community, and ask you to check out those resources so we can bring you more events in the future. Now on to the first session of today's summit, the Digital Transformation Landscape in 2022. This session features Elias Knazar, Chief of Research at EK Media Group. Elias Knazar is a thought leader in the area of cloud computing and digital disruption. Until recently, Elias was Research Vice President at Gartner, where he spent 7 years focusing on private, hybrid, and public cloud computing. Today, Elias continues to conduct research and advise and engage customers and vendors on all aspects of cloud, edge, and data center transformation strategies. He is well known for his ability to simplify complex technical concepts and explain how IT aligns with and forwards business goals. Take it away, Elias.
Thank you, Chris. Welcome, everyone. It's my great pleasure to be here today. And today's topic, or today's first session, is going to be on the state of digital transformation initiatives in 2022. See, and at the beginning of the pandemic, in early 2020, when COVID started to hit, we started to notice an acceleration of all projects at the same time. Digital transformation, cloud computing, all of it, everything was accelerating. The business models needed to change, so digital transformation kicked into full gear. Customers that didn't even believe in cloud were racing towards cloud. It was actually a funny phenomenon because we would talk to the customers that were anti-cloud for a while, and all of a sudden they needed cloud, and they needed cloud for a very simple reason. The data center at the time couldn't fulfill their requirements, and it wasn't because there was an outage in the data center. This is one of those disasters that actually didn't destroy anything. It didn't disrupt anything. The challenge is we couldn't get to the data center because of lockdowns. We couldn't buy the necessary hardware because of supply chain disruption, so we couldn't even scale our data centers for remote work and all of the things that we were being challenged with. And all of a sudden, those folks that were ahead of the game, that had embraced cloud, were in a significantly better position. Those that were already transforming their business and embracing digital transformation, they were in a significantly better position. So the rest felt like they needed to catch up, and that's where that entire acceleration came from in the early to mid 2020s. And then what we started to notice in 2021, when we talked to customers, was that there were some challenges. So customers would say, we're behind schedule on our digital transformation projects, or we are under-resourced for our digital transformation projects, or there's no clear owner of a digital transformation project. Each one of these independently had its own challenges. We're behind schedule, we're under-resourced, meaning we don't have the right team, we don't have the right skill sets, we don't have the right budgeting, we don't have the right prioritization, we don't have a clear owner of, who's responsible for really leading this project. This was really a challenge, and the question then inevitably became, why? Why are all of these challenges all of a sudden happening to these different entities, to these different businesses? See, the challenge with digital transformation projects is the same challenge with cloud projects and is the same challenge that we've always had with BCDR projects. The challenge is that IT is always initiating and leading the project. And this is exactly where the problem lies, is that IT is trying to initiate. Now, when I usually talk to customers and say, why? Why do you think all of these things are happening? And I would also invite you, as I'm going through this, to maybe ask yourself, if you're having these challenges, why? And maybe we can discuss this a little bit later in the Q&A. But why are you having these challenges, right? What is prompting this challenge for your organization? In most cases, what you'll realize is digital transformation means different things to different people. It's a very elusive term, very similar to what cloud computing is. Well, what is our cloud computing strategy? So if I were to ask everyone on the call today to tell me in a very succinct manner, 3 to 4, a paragraph, let's call it, what is your digital transformation strategy? I'm curious what you all would say. Now, if you find yourself in this predicament, if the keywords that I'm about to say are going through your mind, like, for example, elasticity or scalability or resilience or better customer experience, if these are the types of things that you're thinking about when you think of a digital transformation project, and that's exactly the problem, you are thinking of all of the IT drivers that definitely relate to digital transformation, but they also relate to cloud, and they relate to BCDR, and they relate to a whole slew of things. These are IT drivers. These are not business drivers. And the challenge, the thing that I always tell my customers across the board, is that digital transformation is a business transformation powered by technology. I'll even take it a step further and make a pretty bold statement that I always get a rise out of my IT audience when I talk about this, and say, there are no IT projects. There were never any IT projects. There are only business outcomes. So when you put it in this context and then you flip the script and ask yourself, what is your digital transformation strategy? If I were to ask you this, the perfect answer that you can give me is, I don't know. Because you are not supposed to know. You're supposed to ask. You're supposed to inquire. You're supposed to facilitate. But how would you know how the business is going to digitally transform? Now, during the course of this presentation, I am going to give you a real-world example that I went through with my dad's small business and how we digitally transformed his business. Now, it's funny because I'm talking about a small business because oftentimes when I give these presentations, the feedback that I sometimes get is, hey, Elias, you're giving us examples of, that don't really apply to us, or, these are big examples. People talk about Tesla and, Amazon and all of these large businesses, but they can't relate to them. So I'm going to give you an actual example that you can relate to, but I'll tell you a funny story before I do that. In 2019, when I was still at Gartner, I keynoted Gartner Catalyst conference at the time. We were still doing conferences. And in that conference, I had what I thought was a fantastic use case. The use case was Charity Water. This is a nonprofit organization that goes around the world and digs for water in underdeveloped countries and sees the transformation that water can bring to them. And I was appalled on a personal level. It touched me because it was such a powerful mission that they were on. But then what was so interesting about Charity Water was the technology they were bringing. So every well that they would drill, they would put sensors and made it smart wells, and they had all of these technologies around it. But after my presentation, and the keynote was very, very well received, but a lot of the feedback was, well, I'm not a nonprofit. I can't relate to this example. And my whole point behind bringing up that example was, hey, look at what a nonprofit was able to do, and then apply it to yourself as an enterprise, as an organization for profit, and imagine what you can do. So that example was also received with some level of, well, that doesn't apply to me. So I pivoted to a small business example, something that I actually went through, and I'd love to share this. Again, my dad owns a restaurant, so let me give that away a little bit. So what I want you to think of as I'm making my way towards that example is, what the heck do you do with a restaurant to digitally transform it, right? So think about what can be happening there. But the challenge, again, if you're not able to succinctly tell me what your digital transformation strategy is, and there's a problem, because then what are you building exactly? Because I'll talk to customers and they'll be like, well, we're going to AWS, or we're going to Azure, or we're doing this, or we're doing that. All of those are great things that IT is doing, but to what extent? To what end? What is the outcome? Those things we need for a variety of reasons. They will serve us in a variety of areas, whether it's digital transformation or any other IT project that we might be undertaking. But what is the purpose of this? What are you digitizing essentially? What is that business process, that business outcome that you are looking for? That is the first place that I would invite you to look at is, do you have a document that outlines what your digital transformation strategy is? See, what you want to do is you want to allow the business to tell you what they're looking for. You want to allow the business to say what they need in order to be competitive, or what they need in order to survive in these times, in these crazy times that we live in. And then you need to take what the business is saying and translate that into technical terms. These technical terms can be cloud, they can be IoT or edge, they can be a bunch of sensors, they could be real-time analytics, they can be a whole slew of things. But let the business tell you what they want. Don't try to assume what they want. Again, the same problem that we had many, many years ago, and still to today when we do BCDR projects. Most of the BCDR projects are led by IT. And then when I come in and I'm like, what are your RTOs and RPOs? They'll give me RTOs and RPOs. And I'm like, where'd you get them from? And most of the time it's crickets. They don't know where they got them from. They assume that, 5 hours is good enough. I'm like, did you do a business impact analysis? Did the business tell you, which applications are critical? How long can they afford to survive without them, to be without them? Where did you get all of this information from? Oftentimes, again, it's a best guess effort, and IT is just trying to be prepared so that should an event happen, they have some kind of a BCDR plan in place. My advice to you is flip the script. Make sure that you're telling your business on a continuous basis about the importance of a BCDR, what would happen if there is no BCDR, the importance of you getting this information, of conducting a business impact analysis. What do they need from a digital transformation? Why do they need a digital transformation? Let them speak, and then you take that and you translate that into IT terms. Those are the projects that really make progress. They make steady progress because what you've done there is you've made the business a partner in this project. You've gotten executive sponsorship over this project. You need someone to believe in what you're doing. So here's the beautiful thing about that. Once the business understands that, hey, this is not an IT project, whether IT does this or not, IT doesn't really care. This is something that the business needs. All of a sudden, this obsession over budgets and cutting budget goes away. Why? Because it's not an IT project. It's a business necessity. So always try to flip the script. Most of the IT folks, the CIOs, the CTOs that I talk to, there's an obsession today over cutting costs and budget. And my advice is, instead of doing that, flip the script. Tell the business, what do you need? I'm going to go do this for you. This is going to cost this much. There is nothing in this for IT. So try to take IT out of the black hole of being a cost center and flip the script into making IT an enabler of the business by always putting the onus on them to tell you what they need so that you can facilitate. That is a winning recipe that I've seen a lot of organizations use successfully, to the point, and I'm not going to name companies here, but there was a company that was extremely, in my opinion, progressive. This was to a point where the CIO went to the business and said, look, I don't want a budget. I'm going to put the budget back in all of the business units. Whenever you need something done from IT, we will work with you. We will give you an estimated dollar amount for what this is going to cost. You will fund it out of your own budgets. We don't need a budget. They are turning IT into a broker of services. IT becomes a shared services organization that facilitates the business, as opposed to IT is constantly trying to cut costs and cut corners. So small steps, small wins. That's the other advice that I would give you. When you're doing a digital transformation project, there is no way you're going to do everything at the same time and you're going to complete this project. It's not going to have a very clear end date. So my advice is take small steps, take small wins. When you're digitizing a process, an aspect, a part of the business, make sure you celebrate those wins. You advertise those wins. You highlight the fact that what we just did empowered the business to do X. So the importance of success metrics. So as part of this digital transformation strategy that you should be putting together, make sure that you're identifying what does good look like? What does success look like? What do I need to do? What are my phases? And I will also tell you that a digital transformation project is to a large extent open-ended. It's not like it's going to have an end date because things are constantly changing. A year ago, we were dealing with COVID. And COVID's not even over. Hopefully it's over for the most part. But by the time it was over, we were starting to deal with, inflation and raising prices and all of the things that are happening with supply chain that also have an impact on digital transformation. And by the time that had ended, we have some of the geopolitical challenges that we have and ransomware and security challenges that we have. So we are living in a constantly changing world more than ever. But to add on top of all of that, and the reason I say small steps, small wins, and the fact that digital transformation is going to be something that you're going to be doing for a very, very long time, we're starting to talk about the metaverse. We're starting to talk about Web 3.0. Now, some of us believe in them. Some of us are skeptical. It doesn't matter. You need to look at the amount of innovation that's happening. Maybe NFTs and the metaverse and all of these technologies are a joke. I would tell you, make sure you don't take it sarcastically, because in 1994, when the internet was on the cover page of Time magazine, the strange new world of the internet, none of us really understood the full implications of what the internet meant. When I was working at a company in 2001, and I realized that they bought a 3-letter domain name for $30,000, I'm like, what? You bought a domain name for $30,000? Nowadays, if you say, hey, our domain's worth $100,000, it's not a big deal. But back then, it was weird. So just because we don't understand this doesn't mean we should take it lightly. Those are the challenges. Those were the mistakes that companies made that gave way to companies like Amazon to become super companies, companies like Netflix to disrupt entire industries. So the advice is, again, don't underestimate these. There could be a generational gap. I'm never going to buy an NFT potentially, but that doesn't mean that 5 or 10 years from now, there won't be a valid use case for NFTs. There's already talk of how we can use NFTs to authenticate identity and other types of things. So the advice is you're going to be you're going to be chasing digital transformation. There's always going to be a next. Today, you're digitally transforming some of the basics. Tomorrow, you're going to have to figure out how you're going to play in the metaverse. Are you going to buy land? Are you going to build your brand? Or is the marketing team within your organization going to build a presence in the metaverse? And what does that mean for you? What does that mean for IT? What should you be prepared to do? What are the infrastructure, the operations, the platforms that they will need in order to be successful in this crazy new world? But that doesn't stop there. I also believe that we are in the opportunity age. Now, business today, as I'm sure you all know, is conducted everywhere and anywhere. Now, if business is conducted everywhere and anywhere, that means opportunity is everywhere. Now, I will ask you, how do you take opportunity and translate it into technology? For those of you that said data, you're absolutely correct. The way that we're going to translate opportunity is through data, is through real-time analytics and assessments of this data, real-time analytics that allows us to take this data and make actionable decisions against it. That is what is going to give our organization a significant advantage over the competition. Being able to make sense of that data and being able to react quickly. And I say we're in the opportunity age for another reason. So today, if I were to tell you that only 56% of the world's 8 billion people are connected to the internet. But you'll also notice that there are a few companies that started to show up, small companies, right? Companies like SpaceX and Starlink, companies like Amazon that are launching satellites to bring internet to places where there is no internet. Now, these places can be in the U.S. in rural areas, but they can also be in underdeveloped countries where the infrastructure doesn't allow for fiber or anything else. They are bringing internet to these folks. Now, they're not doing this just because they're humanitarian. They're doing this because they want to expand their market reach. What happens when you get more people connected? That is going to have a significant impact on you. Every one of your organization is providing some kind of a product, some kind of a service. So if I say there's 56% of the world that's connected to the internet and we only add 5% more, just imagine what that will do to your business. This doesn't just mean that Amazon's going to grow. Amazon still needs to buy product and services from you, which means if they're growing, you're growing. So when you look at this entire landscape around you, then you have to take a step back and say, how far behind are we? And are we going to be able to catch up to all of these things? And this is why I, again, continuously try to say small steps, small wins, because when you take a look at the overall picture, it can be daunting. Don't try to solve everything at the same time. Noodle at it, take small steps, take small wins when you're going after something like this. Okay, I promised you a real-world use case, which is my dad's restaurant. So my dad's restaurant underwent a digital transformation during COVID. Now, at the time, as I was doing the things I was doing for him, I didn't really notice that he was going through a digital transformation. I was simply helping. Like, he would come to me with a problem, I would solve the problem for him, but I never thought of my dad as a use case that I needed to study or even something that I need to consider. And it was many months later when I took a step back and I'm looking at how much tech there's in this restaurant, I'm like, this is no longer a restaurant. This is a technology company. So my dad came to me early on and basically said, we have a problem with our phone systems because now, few people are walking in the door, everybody is calling, and I need to be able to put messaging, I need to be able to market over the phones, I need to be able to make sure that, phones are not just ringing and nobody's picking up, I need some kind of an attendant. So he started to outline all of these problems, and some of these problems I could still resolve with his traditional phone system. But then as he started to ask for more and more complicated features, I'm like, okay, now we need to get you some kind of a voice over IP system, because his traditional phones were wireless phones, which means you had to position the main phone somewhere in the middle of the restaurant so that the rest of them can actually have signal, because it was hard to get phone wiring to all the places that you needed a phone line. So we deployed a VoIP system that essentially checked off all of the boxes that he was looking to get out of this problem. So that was the first attempt at digitizing one of his services. My dad then came to me and said, because not a lot of people are walking in anymore, and because we're constantly having to change the prices because of inflation, because of a variety of reasons, Grubhub and Uber Eats are charging me more, so I need to raise my prices. I can no longer continuously print menus. How do I digitize menus? Now, digitizing a menu isn't new. I'm sure most of you would be like, well, Eli, that's kind of old news. Here's the challenge with restaurants. The biggest challenge with restaurants is being able to train the customer. It's the learning curve. So pre-COVID, if I were to put a QR code at the table and basically say, hey, you can scan this QR code to get your menu, I would say 95% of my customers that are not tech savvy would probably complain and they would ask for an actual menu. During COVID, because nobody wanted to touch physical things anymore, everyone learned to use QR codes and they started expecting a QR code. So we digitized his menu with QR codes by putting it on the website and a variety of other things, including having iPads. Like we did everything that we could to digitize the menu to make it easy for him to update it, but also convenient for the customer. That was another thing that we also did. Then he came to me and said, I need to be able to talk to my customer. Again, customers aren't necessarily walking in, and if they're walking in very quickly to be able to pick up an order and then walk out. Very few people were sitting down. But I want to make sure that even when people come back, I have a way to message to them. Now, the way my dad used to message to people before this digital signage project took off was he would print pictures and put them on top of counters. They would be all over the place. And every time he wanted to advertise something new, again, the process started all over. It just didn't scale, and it wasn't having the right impact. So we went in and did digital signage where he can update it very quickly. He can send a quick message. He can highlight what's going on. That had a significant impact during COVID, but it's having a significant impact even now post-COVID, hopefully post-COVID. What else? So my dad has about 22 freezers and coolers throughout the restaurant. And these are probably his biggest expense. And the problem with these is they would break, and they would break at very inconvenient hours of the day. They would break at 1 o'clock in the morning when nobody's at the restaurant. And by the time you came into the restaurant and you realized that this cooler has been off for 7 or 8 hours, everything that was in it is now garbage. You have to throw it away. And that was a significant expense. And so he was spending a lot of money on the maintenance. But his problem when he came to me is, hey, is there a way that I can be notified ahead of time that this thing broke? And I'm like, sure, it's going to cost you a little bit of money. He's like, it's not going to cost me more than what I'm spending on maintenance today. Again, when the business problem arose, he didn't care about spending the money, which is, again, what I want to reinforce is when you can tie your project back to a business outcome, the money will find itself. It's not a big deal. So what did we do? We ended up going around putting sensors in all of these coolers, all of these freezers, gave him a dashboard where he can see the temperatures. But more than that, we created alerts and notifications so that, at 1 o'clock in the morning, if this thing breaks, it's going to send an alert to him and potentially the maintenance person that he's contracted with so that someone can maybe go into the restaurant, move the stuff, or fix the equipment before it ruins the inventory that's sitting in it. That was another thing that we did for him. And then the best one of all was the delivery services and the integration of these delivery services. So hear me out. This is hopefully going to be interesting to a lot of you that are dealing with SaaS applications. So at the beginning of COVID, again, walk-ins slowed down at the restaurant, and restaurants heavily relied on delivery services like Grubhub and Uber Eats and DoorDash and all of the other services in order to keep these restaurants in business. They were taking a lot of money in terms of a percentage, but that was the only way to stay in business. Now, every one of those services will give you an iPad, and these iPads or tablets, whatever you want to call them, sometimes they worked with the printers that you had, and sometimes you had to buy a printer because some of them needed Bluetooth connectivity, some of them needed Wi-Fi, etc. So that was the first challenge, but all of a sudden he was faced with, he now has 4 or 5 tablets on the counter that he didn't have before that do not integrate with his point of sales system, which means when you receive an order, you have to print this order 4 or 5 times, deliver 1 copy to the kitchen, 1 copy to the person that's going to package everything together, 1 copy, to the line cooks, etc. And this was starting to become a nightmare because it wasn't integrated, so it disrupted their operations. Now they've got different papers. The kitchen staff is already a very difficult staff to deal with in the first place. Now you're giving them different tickets to look at that say different things, that look differently. They're going to complain. It was COVID time, so they're going to complain regardless, right? But you're giving them another excuse. So my challenge was, how do I standardize and simplify this? How do I integrate all of these services within his POS so that the kitchen, the staff, nobody knew the difference between if this was coming from his own website or if this was coming from a Grubhub. So we went through and we took care of that, and that was another digital project for him. In addition to all of that, he gives free Wi-Fi to all of the customers that walk into the restaurant. He's got IP security cameras that are all over the place. You guys don't know my dad. You guys and gals don't know my dad, but my dad loves cameras. So there are a lot of cameras in there. So when I take a step back and look at the closet of equipment that he's got at this restaurant, it's not a restaurant anymore. The amount of technology in there is fascinating. And he continues to add. So now when he's buying equipment, my dad learned, because of the temperature sensor thing, that when he goes to buy a fryer, he automatically asks the company that he's buying from, is this a smart fryer, and can I connect it to different platforms that I've given him so that he can ask? So he's becoming more tech savvy because he wants to make sure that he's got good control over this. So when we're talking about a digital transformation and I look at this and I'm like, well, I had small wins with VoIP and small wins with the menu and signage and this and this and this, I took a step back and I'm like, I did a digital transformation of my dad's small business. The point of this example and what I want you to take from it is enjoy the small wins, celebrate the small wins, and highlight them. Make sure your business understands that we were able to complete a digital transformation of a specific business process. Because it is never going to end. There's always going to be something that you're going to need to digitize. That would be a key takeaway from this example. Now, if we come back to what are we really trying to accomplish from a digital transformation, and we overlay that also on top of the example that I just gave you, the first thing that we want to do is we want to improve the customer experience. And can I say from what I've done for my dad, for example, that I improved the customer experience? I would say yes. We digitized the menu, so we made it convenient for people to be able to not touch physical things that they didn't want to touch. We allowed ourselves to advertise to them, so the signage was helpful. They knew what they can order, what was new, so we improved the user experience there. We optimized our operations, and I'm going to come and talk about that a little bit in a second. But all of these things were things where we enhanced the user experience when they called now. And if nobody was able to pick up, there was music, there was hold, there was a message that was being advertised to them when they were on hold. All of that catered to this improved user experience. New business models. So as we went through this digital transformation, without me, if I'm being humble here, if my dad didn't have someone to guide him, first of all, this would have cost him 10 times more, but it would have been also significantly slower, and he would have potentially been one of those restaurants that closed down because he couldn't evolve. His business model didn't evolve. If people couldn't come in and sit at the restaurant, and that means he couldn't sell anything, that means he needed to close. But we were able to very quickly pivot him to a different business model that allowed him to survive this pandemic. So definitely a win there. And then when we talk about optimized operations, I gave you the example earlier when we were integrating all of these different delivery services. Before we integrated them, it was you had to print different copies from each one of these platforms, and then with SneakerNet, take it to every station and basically put it there. When we were able to integrate it, now it became part of the business that they do on a normal basis. Everybody was happy. There was no complaint. So we were able to optimize the process, the operational process of what he was doing. These three pillars really constitute what you need to be thinking about when you are thinking about a digital transformation strategy. Now, I also want to talk a little bit about tech. Now, when we are looking at what we need to be focused on, what we need to do to prepare for this digital transformation, let's assume you don't have a digital transformation strategy in place yet. You don't know what you need to do as of yet or how you need to do this. There are things that you can start to put in place to prepare for this. And I call this an intent-based platform, a platform that is programmable, a platform that is intelligent, that is scalable, that is composable, that is intelligent. This type of a platform allows you to position yourself to take advantage of all of the different changes that are going on around you. So there are things, there are steps that you can take today that helps, that facilitates, that anticipates. For example, the first thing that I would advise you to do is to have an API-driven, API-first, API everywhere approach. That means if we go all the way down to the bare infrastructure, I'm talking converged, hyper-converged, traditional servers, blades, whatever you want to call it, composed infrastructure where you're bringing in, racks and racks of just raw resources and then composing them. Anything at the infrastructure layer has to be API addressable. If you're in the cloud IaaS, infrastructure as a service, by default is API driven, API accessible, so you don't have a problem there. Everything else, API driven, API accessible. That's number one thing that you have to focus on. You want to be able to make sure that that's covered. Start to take the right steps towards that. Why? Because that then enables us to enable programmability. Programmability in terms of automation, in terms of software defined. I am able to compose these different services however way I want. The Catalyst is that API. Everything else can then be a programmable interface that I can leverage. So having that programmability layer becomes crucial. One of today's sponsors is Red Hat, right? Now, Red Hat has several abilities there that allows you to do something like this. And no one told me to say this, by the way. It's part of the talk track that I'm talking about here. But if you look at OpenShift or if you look at Ansible, both of those are technologies that will allow you to do something like this. Now, Red Hat's not the only one that offers something like this. You can also look at Terraform, and you can look at Puppet and Chef. You can look at Pivotal that also offers a platform that's similar to OpenShift. So there's a lot of players in this space, but these are the types of things that you want to start thinking about, that you want to start considering. That programmability layer becomes really, really important. We also want to make sure that the platform allows for composability. Now, what does composability mean? Composability means I want to be able to stitch together services from different capabilities of this platform or potentially from different platforms. So, for example, maybe I want to use containers off of my platform, but I also want to tie that with a platform as a service or PaaS capabilities that OpenShift is offering, or Pivotal is offering, or AWS or Azure or Google or Oracle is offering. I want to be able to put those together and then create a higher level service. That is a composable platform, something that gives me this flexibility to put things together. Again, you are positioning yourself to anticipate the types of things that your digital transformation is going to request of you. These are the different building blocks, different technologies that you have to have in place in order to react very quickly to the things that they're asking you to do. Now, it's not enough to be able to have a platform that's API-driven, that's programmable, and that's composable. The next iteration of that is that this platform also has to be intelligent. Now, the intelligence piece is going to come in different maturity levels. You're going to be able to do some things immediately, and then some of the things I'm about to tell you, we're not there yet. We're years away. But again, having this platform allows you to take advantage of it when that technology becomes available. So intelligent, because we were talking earlier about the fact that opportunity is going to be everywhere, and opportunity translates to data, and we want to take the data, get real-time insights and analytics that we can make a decision against, right? That is the intelligence layer that you build into this platform, where you're connecting to these AI systems, where you're able to connect to these real-time analytic systems that empower you to make that decision. But I want to take it a step further for those of you that are in IT here. We want the intelligence layer of this platform to be able to address the intent of the developer or the citizen IT person that's using it. So I no longer want the developer to come to the operations team and say, here's my scripts or here's my application, deploy it for me. We want the developer to take advantage of the application, of the platform. Take advantage of the platform either by using templates, workflows, etc., or by simply stating their intent. Maybe the developer is trying to have a server deployed that has SOX compliance. Then the platform will take the server, it will put it in the right subnet, it will apply the right security measures against it, and it will continuously monitor it to ensure that this server is continuously within the parameters that were set. We want to be able to translate the intent. That's far out. That's years out, but that's what we want this platform to be. But what it can do today from an intelligence perspective, it could be self-healing. So instead of waiting for that storage to fail, let's make sure that we can anticipate that this storage is about to fail, alert us, change it so that we can avert that. We want it to be self-healing so that if a server fails in an autoscaling group, it can remove that server out of the autoscaling group using the programmability, the automation that we've built in, deploy another server, and make sure that there's no disruption to the service that is being offered. So the intelligence layer is crucial. Parts of the intelligence layer are here today. We can take advantage of them. Parts we're going to see in the near future, hopefully, or in the future. That's the intent part of the automation phase. Now, of course, you can't have a platform today that is not secure. So whenever you're thinking about this platform, you want to make sure that security is built in, security is inherent as part of it, whether you're going to be leveraging CASBs, when you have different SaaS applications, or a whole slew of other things, identity and access management, all of the encryption, all of the things that you would need to take as measures for this platform. And finally, for this platform to be successful, you need to have a mindset change. So you cannot operate this platform the way that you've been operating your on-premises data center for the last decade or so. We want to have a platform ops approach to this platform. We want to make sure that the developers understand where their limitations are, what they can and cannot do with this platform, what their roles and responsibilities are, and the same thing applies to the operations folks, and the same thing will apply to your executives as well. The nice thing about a platform ops approach is we're able to operate this platform where we all know where we stand. The biggest challenge to DevOps approaches today is confusion. Everyone is trying to do DevOps, but it's not really working very well. And it's not working because there are no barriers, there are no limitations. Nobody knows who's supposed to be doing what. Platform ops brings structure to that specific type of practice. And that's what makes it really important and really strong. And then finally, what we want to do is we want to be able to bring this type of a platform everywhere. We talked about the fact that business is conducted everywhere and anywhere. Opportunity is everywhere, which means your infrastructure, your applications, your data, your real-time analytics, your security, you guessed it, it has to be everywhere. You have to be able to support it, whether it's on-premises in your data center, in your traditional data center, which, by the way, I don't even know if that should be called on-premises data center anymore. In my opinion, that's just another edge location. But I digress for now. So on-premises, in the cloud, whether it's a single cloud, whether, for IaaS and PaaS, we're talking AWS, Azure, Google, Oracle, Alibaba, whatever. Whether it's multi-cloud, maybe you have more than one cloud that you are going to be dealing with. Most customers have AWS and Azure, or AWS and Google, or Oracle and Azure, etc. So you want to be able to factor that in. You want to be able to make sure that you're able to support a hybrid architecture so that all of these are interconnected, and then the edge. The edge is going to be that next frontier that we have to conquer. Whether it's in a business as small as my dad or a business as large as Amazon with all of the new supermarkets that are opening with Amazon Fresh, where you're able to walk in and walk out, with no cashier. Essentially, it is a hands-off experience. Put everything in your cart and you walk out. That is going to be crucial to be able to have that technology at the edge, have real-time analytics at the edge, so that we're not waiting for the data to come back to the cloud so that we can process it and then take actionable decisions against it. We want to do that immediately. The name of the game is going to be speed. So at the end of this, we want to be able to do digital transformation, support the business wherever it is, not just in the data center, not just in the cloud, not just at the edge. We are here to serve the business wherever business is being conducted. So what are the takeaways? What would I advise you to do immediately? The first thing, the number one thing that I would advise you to do immediately, seek executive sponsorship. Make sure that you have someone that's telling you what to do with digital transformation. What do you need to transform? Put it back on them to make sure they have budget. How urgent is this? How do we prioritize this? Make the business a partner, bring someone in, make them your executive sponsor. Make sure you document your business objectives and clear success metrics. So have a document, it doesn't have to be a long document, a 5-pager, that identifies what you're trying to accomplish, what is which one comes first, so how are you going to tier these, what is the timeline, what are the success metrics for each. Have that document circulated so that everyone is on the same page. That's the other challenge with these types of projects, is oftentimes different teams are not on the same page. When you have a document that is blessed by an executive sponsor and that's being properly circulated, now you've got something that you can always refer back to, and this document is not going to be set in stone. You're able to iterate on it every 6 months, every year. It is an ongoing living document that I significantly highlight, that you can significantly highlight your progress in as well. Document your business objectives in this document as well, so that you're not just looking at it from the perspective of what IT wants to do, but what you as a business are trying to accomplish. Now, highlight also some kind of a SWOT assessment. A SWOT assessment will be important to identify the weaknesses and the successes, and the strengths of the business. So if the weaknesses are lack of resources or lack of skills, highlight that as a weakness so that you can go address it. If your weakness is a lack of budget, highlight that. Lack of sponsorship, highlight that. So as IT, you're able to do a SWOT assessment against these projects to understand what capabilities you have today and what capabilities you need tomorrow. At the end of this, I hope this was interesting. I hope you got a lot of value from it. And I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say, guys and gals have to say from a questions perspective. Chris?
Yeah, thanks. That was an informative and entertaining presentation, Elias. So it sounds like you're up for some audience questions.
Let's do it.
Okay. This first one comes in from Michael. Clients ask us where to get started. Usually we base it on bandwidth or impact. I think there has to be a better way. What are your thoughts on that?
Sorry, you said usually it's bandwidth or what?
Bandwidth or impact.
Oh, impact. Yeah, I agree. So if there's the better way is to, again, have someone else prioritize it for you. Bandwidth is us saying we can do this or we can't do this. And usually bandwidth is based on the projects that we're working on. So my advice is to take the current projects that are making up your bandwidth and prioritize them, applying an impact to each one of them. What is the impact of this project that we're currently working on, and how much bandwidth is it taking? So if your organization, for example, I don't know, maybe you're going through a Wi-Fi project within your organization, where does that fit on the priorities list? I would say it's important, but is that going to give your business any kind of a competitive advantage immediately? Is that a digital transformation for your business? Depends on your industry, maybe. Most likely, probably not. So what I would do is prioritize these lists that are taking up all the bandwidth, highlight the impact of them, but go back to the business and see if there's something that is more pressing, more urgent. So how do you do it better? I would say put it on the business to prioritize your projects for you.
Okay, great. Here's another one. What is the number one mistake you see orgs make when first starting out on their digital transformation strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question. Most customers will start this type of a project ad hoc. And that's usually the Achilles heel. And you'll find different departments doing different things independently. And then by accident, sometimes they'll realize, hey, we're kind of working on the same thing here. So I would say having someone responsible owning this project is the biggest mistake that I've seen customers make, is that not having someone own it, right? So the first thing that I would say is make sure you appoint someone to run this, to actually coordinate the different efforts, to make sure that no one is doing anything in a bubble or outside of the context of what all of you are trying to accomplish. So make sure that, for example, with cloud projects, we always say, make sure you appoint a cloud architect. With a digital transformation, I would say appoint someone that is responsible for digital transformation, a business manager, an executive, an enterprise architect, but have someone coordinate and lead these projects. So that would be one. Number two, again, without this, you'll find that your budget is also all over the place, so you're unable to do things efficiently, which is what's leading to these lack of resources and what's keeping you behind. And number three, I would say not knowing your capabilities from a skills perspective, from a personnel perspective, what you can do with the existing team. Do you need to bring in new folks to help? Do you need to bring in a consulting company? So not really having a true assessment of your landscape.
Okay. How long does it usually take to complete a digital transformation initiative, or is there an actual timeline orgs should be following?
Yeah. That's another one I get a lot. I get that question a lot. So oftentimes when customers are trying to put this together, they want to be able to put some kind of a timestamp against it. Be able to say, we're going to be able to complete this in 6 months. I would say digital transformation, like we talked about in the presentation, it's going to be something that you're going to be doing on an ongoing basis. By the time you finish one thing, there will be something else. Again, I gave the example of whatever projects you're working on, and if they take 12 months or 18 months to complete, by the time they're done, you're going to start thinking about the metaverse and some of the other things that are going on that you'll have to tackle in some way, shape, or form. So I would say digital transformation in general is going to be something that we do on an ongoing basis, so it never ends. However, different phases within the digital transformation projects definitely need to have an end date. And what I would say is these phases, it will vary. Some of these will take 6 months to complete. Some will take a year to complete. Some will take 3 months to complete. Depends on the complexity, how much integration you have to do between the different systems, and what you're trying to, again, accomplish, and do you have the right skill sets. But usually within 6 months, the project is at significant completion.
Okay. Here's kind of a related question about this skill set. What are the skills needed for digital transformation?
Excellent question. I'm going to answer this the way I used to answer my questions when I was an analyst. It depends. I say it depends because each digital transformation phase of the project will require different skill sets. For example, if you're dealing with IoT and sensors and sensor-based stuff, and you need to understand the different protocols that happen at the edge, and you need to understand how you integrate the edge, that is a different skill set. If your project requires ingestion of large amounts of data, and you're trying to do that in the cloud, and you're looking for data lakes and data warehouses and analytics on an AWS or Azure or Google, that's a little bit of a different skill set. If it requires that you have something related to security potentially and how you're going to integrate all of these things or encrypt them, that's a different skill set. So what will dictate the skill set necessary for each phase of your digital transformation? That is what a SWOT assessment will highlight for you as you go through it. It will highlight the weaknesses and the strengths, and it will also highlight the needed skill sets for this phase of the project.
Okay. Here's a question that's probably on a lot of our minds. Since digital transformation is open-ended, how do we plan to budget for this?
The budget question is an art. I will say budgets are art, not science. Again, it's going to depend on the type of project and on the urgency of the project. Someone asked earlier about the impact. That is going to factor in here. So how do you budget depends on what the business wants. If the business is dictating a certain project, then they need to find the budget for it. What I would say is budget should never be just an IT obsession, because again, we obsess over budget these days. And I would say flip the script, put it back on the business to find the budget if they need the project. Now, if the budget is something related to, hey, how do we, we've got aging infrastructure and we need to update that. Okay, that's an IT problem that you need to figure out how to find budget for. But in a digital transformation, the same way I gave you the example of my dad when he was having a problem with, his cooling system, he found the budget even though he wasn't really making money. He was tight. I mean, he barely made it. But he was able to find the money because he knew that would save him a lot of money moving forward. So I would say make the business find the budget for you.
Okay. I think we have one more question. What's the best way to approach CIOs or CTOs if they are not believers in business-driven digital transformation versus IT-driven?
Again, a great question. So here, usually within organizations, you're going to have someone that takes the lead naturally on evangelizing these things. Now, if you're not, again, being able, I don't want to say convince, because convince isn't the right thing. You shouldn't be convincing anyone. If they can't see it, it's a little bit of a problem. But what you can do is continuously arm them with information, continuously give them data, continuously give them examples, continuously show them potentially what their competitors are doing. Hopefully, if conference season comes back, take them to invite them to come to conferences with you. Let them have conversations with their peers, understand what their peers are doing, Those are the types of things that you should be doing, which is evangelizing within your organization's community to your CIO, to your business leaders, and to your colleagues. We saw this with cloud. It's happening with digital transformation. And again, usually someone will emerge, someone that's passionate about it. It comes naturally to them. They're able to see it. I would say be patient. It's not always going to be easy. But I think if you stay at it, they have no way, they cannot not upgrade their thinking when it comes to that. Because again, give them the examples of COVID and cloud that I talked about earlier. Those that were in cloud didn't have to scale much to enable remote working. Those that weren't, they had a problem. I mean, I can tell you some war stories about some of the challenges customers had. So give these types of examples. Bring up the metaverse in terms of the amount of investments that are going on in the world and how that's going to impact. So build a case, but it'll take a little work on your end and some evangelizing.
Okay. Looks like that's all the questions we have time for. Thanks again, Elias.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and I hope this was really informative, and I hope we get a chance to do this again soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Everyone stay tuned. We're going to take a short break and be back at the top of the hour for our second session of the day, Key Digital Transformation Best Practices. Take a chance to check out those resources on your consoles provided by Atlantis, A10 Networks, and Red Hat, and we'll be right back.
welcome back to our second session. David, please take it away.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being here for our second session titled Key Digital Transformations Best Practices, and brought to you by Mirantis, A10 Networks, and Red Hat. I'm David Rammel, editor of Virtualization and Cloud Review, and I am pleased to introduce our speaker for this session, Howard M. Cohen, a senior resultant at the Tech Channel Partners Results Group. Howard is a 35-plus year executive veteran in the IT industry who writes for and about the IT channel and speaks at industry events like Microsoft Inspire, Citrix, Synergy/Summit, and many others. Also, he frequently hosts and presents webinars for many different vendors and publications. Howard, it's great to have you here. Please take it away.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. And hello, everybody. Welcome to today's session on key digital transformation best practices. One of the questions that we get most often is exactly what is a digital transformation? And it's funny because if you ask 100 people, you'll probably get 100 different answers. Everybody has their own perspective on what digital transformation really means. I'm going to share mine with you, and hopefully, you'll see it forms the basis of the rest of the conversation. So, what exactly is digital transformation? Some people think that if you're going to create a masterpiece, I don't know if any of you have ever seen her in the Louvre, but she's 8.5 by 11. Tiny little thing. But it's brilliantly detailed, and of course, Leonardo da Vinci used the tools you would expect. He used paint and a palette and brushes and whatever else, and he created his masterpiece. Some people think that digital transformation is the process of giving the artist new tools to create the masterpiece with. And I'm going to say that it's not enough. If you're using the same tools to get the same old job done, that's not transformation. Nothing has changed. Some people think that digital transformation is the ongoing process of changing the tools that you use. Here we see the progress of human beings and the tools that they've used every step along the way. And of course, we end up kind of back where we started in that same crouching position. But here again, it's not so much about the tools. Some people think that digital transformation is simply forklift replacing your computer equipment. You get that's an upgrade. It's not a transformation. It's simply an upgrade. And here we see a recent upgrade that was beaten. Okay, so here's my take on digital transformation. It's not so much about the technology. It's not so much about the products that you use. It's about people. It's about what people use technology for to make things better, to make things work better, more productively, more efficiently, to get rid of repetitive tasks that people don't need to be doing and give those to machines. Let the machines take care of that so that people can do things that are more interesting, more motivating, more inspiring. To me, digital transformation is all about making life better for people and changing, using technology to change the way they work, live, and play. Another thing about digital transformation that's important to remember is that it's disruptive. Okay, now you could be the disruptor who is disrupting your market, and all your competitors are like, "Oh my God, how do we keep up?" Wouldn't that be nice? Or you could be the disrupted. So I like being the disruptor a whole lot better. Digital transformation is a great way to do it. Change up the way you're doing things, and change up the things that you do with technology. So that concept of being disruptive, that's why an upgrade is not a transformation. It disrupts nothing. The other thing I like to think of is innovation. Digital transformation should always be innovative, meaning that you're introducing something new or a new way of doing something, a better way. You're taking technology and you're taking your own creativity and you're reimagining how things can be done. To me, that's a much more attractive idea of what a digital transformation is. So that's my take on digital transformation. Love to hear your comments about it, either in the Q&A or email. And I always like getting other people's perspectives on this because it's so talked about. Okay, so we're here today to talk about key digital transformation best practices. And I had a challenge when I started to think about what I wanted to talk about here. You could get lost in talking about bits and bytes. You could talk about the features and benefits of technologies, but I really didn't want to do that. Also, every digital transformation is kind of different from the others, so it's kind of hard to get that consistency of process. That said, there is a way to approach a digital transformation that should be consistent, that the things that you should do to get a really effective digital transformation that makes a real difference in your operation. And as with so many other things, this sequence of events begins with why. Start with why. Yes, I am for those of you who've been on my webinars before, Simon Sinek should be paying me a commission because I constantly bring up his wonderful book and his wonderful concept. And this time I'm going to share his wonderful diagram, which suggests that this is a repetition of the limbic system of your brain. The core of it is why. In this case, we're talking about why do you want to make a change, any kind of change? Why? Second, how would you like to see what you're changing change? What will the change look like when you're done? How are you going to change it? And then finally, what do you want to change? And what will that change disrupt? So we go from the why to the how to the what. And when starting with the why, you begin with discovery. You don't know what you don't know. And so I suggest that everybody start with a comprehensive inventory of everything in their business operation. Every business department, every piece of technology that's in use right now, every software product that's in use right now, everything you can possibly get, document your current state. What do you have? Because any journey, and the digital transformation is certainly a journey, has a beginning and an end. And if you don't know both those points, it's kind of hard to get from one to the other. So, on the one hand, learn your current state, and then develop in your mind as much as you possibly can about how you do what you do and why. There they are. How, what, and why. I mentioned earlier, what are the departments? What are the divisions of your company that are going to benefit from your transformation? Which ones might you be leaving out? Which ones might you be leaving out that you really do want to include because there's benefit to it? It's a lot of thinking. It's a lot of discussion. It's a lot of planning, but better that than try to go into something as integral to your business as a digital transformation willy-nilly. You don't want to do that. So begin with why. Know your current state. Know what technologies you're currently using in every department, in every division. This may be a great opportunity for you to out some shadow IT, to expose some of the shadow IT that's sitting out there that nobody knew about. Well, now you can learn about it, and maybe you can incorporate that into your planning for this digital transformation. This is going to lead you to start identifying what technologies would really create the kind of change you're looking for. What can you use to create real innovation in your operations, in the way in which you're communicating with others, and so forth. Very, very key concept that requires you to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening in technology. And if we have time, we'll get to that a little bit later. Okay, so now that we've documented our current state, we know everything that's going on, it's time to start thinking about where can we affect some transformation that would really be beneficial, that would really change something in a way that makes it so much better and makes the employee experience so much better, because that's important too. Happy employees create happy customers. So that's a big portion of why we want to make changes. Where are the opportunities to do that? Certainly they are in processes and procedures. Okay, how you do what you do, and finding new ways to do those things that would really improve the way in which you do them, accelerate it perhaps, give you a better handle on quality perhaps, accelerate the cycle of feedback back to manufacturing so you can improve the product more quickly. Then how can you leverage cloud? Since cloud first became popular, people have realized that it's more than just not having the servers on-prem. It's having the servers centralized somewhere where everybody has the same access to them. What does that give you in the context of what you're doing? How much more does cloud give you that you really maybe couldn't have done before, but now that it's in cloud, you can? And as you think through that, you're going to find there's more and more and more. Cost optimization. You notice that I've gotten this far in the presentation, and this is the first time I'm mentioning cost, which usually comes first in every presentation. I think it's more about better than it is about cost, but obviously everybody wants to save money. And why not make things more cost effective? So that too is an important thing to think about. And then, once again, coming back to it, it's about people. It's about making it better for people, making it more interesting, making it more stimulating, getting more of their heart into what they do and how they do it. And then, ending where I started, what processes could be re-engineered completely for greater efficiency? What if you reimagined how you do certain things? And there are some things you probably think about all the time that, boy, you'd love to change them, but you haven't gotten around to it. Well, a digital transformation may be an ideal time to get around to it. And of course, where can you reduce costs? Where can you increase revenues? I include this bullet all the time because those happen to be the only two ways to build profit. The only two things you can do are find ways to decrease your costs and find ways to increase your revenues. And if you're doing both, you're probably increasing your profits pretty dramatically. So a digital transformation should contribute to one or the other, or preferably both. Okay, so now that we've found some opportunities, places where we can start to really apply a digital transformation that would really bring us more value from that, it's time to plan. And when we plan, we're going to plan for change. We're going to plan to move ahead in a completely different way and plan how we're going to get there without disruption of our operation. When you disrupt, you want to disrupt everybody else. The one thing you don't want to disrupt is the ongoing functioning of your operation. So we need to plan for that. And so we're going to create a comprehensive digital transformation plan. This plan needs to be detailed. You need to talk about what we're going to do every step of the way and in what sequence. What's it going to do? Let's constantly keep our focus on why we're doing what we're doing and make sure it's built into the plan so that we constantly remind ourselves, if we don't get it working just this way, it's not going to benefit anybody. So the idea of, thinking about the why. We started with the why, continue thinking about the why throughout the planning process. And also, don't try to plan in a vacuum. That's the whole point. Digital transformation usually connotes a cultural shift, a shift in the culture of the organization. You can't proactively change a culture. You can influence it. You can give evidence. You can gradually evolve it. It's hard to change the culture. But digital transformation requires that everybody buy in. So you need to establish a consensus of everybody that's involved, all the departmental managers who are going to be involved in the process, stakeholders who are going to approve budgets. You need them involved in this planning process. You need executive buy-in from the top, and you need grassroots buy-in from the general working team that's out there making the business happen. With each recommendation, you need to be very clear about what you anticipate the outcome to be and what you anticipate the value of that outcome to be to the organization. Once you have a plan, the next step is to deploy that plan. And so you go tactical. You start to do the things that need to get done. Source the resources you need as you move along to install, to integrate, and to maintain each technology as you go. And don't forget the people. I keep coming back to it, and I will continue to keep coming back to it. Training your people in the use of this new technology is the most critical step to getting value out of the technology, because if people don't use it, 75% of projects fail because the people fail to adopt the new technology. So don't let that happen to you. Train the people, provide for ongoing support, and make sure they feel like they have everything they need to do their work and enjoy the new tools that you've given them. And as I said, ongoing support is, when it's done right, is a two-way street. It's as much helping people learn how to do things as it is learning from people what else they'd like to be able to do. Nobody can give you a better sense of how to improve what you transformed than your users can. So make that support organization a two-way support organization, collecting feedback as much as you're giving answers. And then you've really you've gone from the beginning to the end of this journey. Your users are now out there using your new technology. Your team is supporting them the best way that you can, and we continue on from there. Okay. So now that we have an understanding of the process, let's talk about the kind of things you might want to think about transforming. What I'm saying is, let's go in search of digital transformation opportunities. Where would you find the opportunities to make a transformation that would be really, really meaningful? And usually when we talk about this, the very first word out of anybody's mouth is automation. How can we apply automation to make things better? And indeed, I mean, we're updating data centers with more and more automation all the time. Orchestration, automation of processes, automation of load balancing, all kinds of automation. Well, in manufacturing, there are many menial tasks that just have to get done over and over and over and over again. Why waste people on those repetitive tasks? Why not put automation in place? In the long run, it'll be far less expensive. It'll also eliminate just about all opportunity for failure, and it will free up those human resources to do far more interesting things. So my recommendation always is to look at every step in the process. Find the steps that are repetitive. Find the steps that, quite frankly, don't take a whole lot. These days, you can even find processes that require something of a judgment call, and you can apply artificial intelligence to make that judgment call. and to make a determination as to whether or not to go to the next step. So, explore automation, process automation, far more deeply than you ever did before. And let's find those places where we can replace people with automation to do the things that it's a waste of those people. The other kind of automation that's very popular is workflow automation. And for a variety of reasons. I talked before about data centers. We're renovating, dramatically evolving the automation used in the data center to really do as much as possible so people can concentrate on the finer points, the things that require real deep thinking. But workflow automation has another value, and we really discovered it, as with so many things, when COVID-19 happened. We're in a pandemic. Everybody's being sent home to work, and not every manager, but a lot of managers are saying, well, how do I know everybody's working? How do I know that they're working when they're not here? In earlier presentations, I've called that the farmer's shadow concept. Farmers who think that the farmer's shadow is the best fertilizer. They have to be able to cast their shadow upon it. Well, managers feel they have to cast their shadow upon their employees. Otherwise, they can't be guaranteed that they'll work. And it's nonsense. With today's workflow automation, you can have every employee indicate the beginning and end of every process they do so that you can gauge how much time things take them. But at the same time, you're getting a flag that says, that employee is working right now. That employee is working right now. And you can interrogate the data just as easily as you could observe or interrogate the employee. So workflow automation has given us some amazing ability to allow everybody to work wherever they want to work. Work has become an activity. It's not a destination anymore. You don't go to work, you just get to work. And you use workflow automation to track all the processes and at the same time measure all the processes, because the more you measure, the more you can learn about how to make those processes even better. Okay, in addition to automation, another thing that has really been tremendously transformed is communications. And I'm going to suggest that that's been in the works for a long, long time. Here is a woman using picture phone. She happens to be in the AT&T Pavilion of the 1964-65 World's Fair. I have to admit that I actually was there and did exactly what she's doing 60 years ago. I was a toddler. And we've come a long way. Today, we don't think twice about sitting in front of the screen and talking to dozens of people in conference calls or one-on-one in regular calls. There's no stigma. It's not amazing anymore. It's every day. And we're seeing communications continue to evolve and continue to get more mobile. Wearables are giving us whole new approaches to things. Soon, implantables may be next. So again, digital transformation in communications has been beyond dramatic, and it's been going on for 60 years. Today, we can go from texting to talking to seeing each other to sharing applications, whiteboarding effortlessly with a click. And sometimes I think we don't appreciate just how remarkable that really is. Then there's collaboration in the context of people working together from wherever they are, doing whatever they need to do. The concept of simultaneous editing of a document, unthought of a couple of decades ago, but commonplace today. You can be working on a proposal, and your colleague on another continent can be working on another portion of the same proposal, and you can see each other's work as you go. The document is in the midst of all of you. That's completely different from the way people used to work. Just the concept, the process of approvals. You used to have to send a document to somebody for approval, They would sign off on the approval sheet and pass it to the next person on the list. They would sign off on it and pass to the next person. It could take weeks just to get an approval. Today, you just put the document out, you give them a little checkbox to check, and within the day, usually, you know who you have to chase after to get everybody's approvals. It takes no time. I mentioned just before the ways in which we communicate. The ways in which we collaborate are just as amazing. We can take an architect can take a client on a walkthrough of their proposed property simply by holding their mobile phone over a model of that property. And yes, of course, we can use tools to create a 3D model that is rotatable and you can view any angle in space. The imagination is the limit. We are only limited by our imagination in terms of what we can do, in terms of working together. And working together just no longer means being together. We can work together. This is not as much of an opportunity as it is something we want to gain. The concept of agility. The concept of agility speaks to so many things. When we build a system and we choose the components of that system, used to be you would go out, you would select a server, you would select storage, you would select peripherals, you would select power backup, you would select a whole list of products, you would assemble them in your data center or network closet, and if one of them didn't perform quite the way you wanted to, and you were beyond the return period, you had to go get new budget if you were going to think about replacing it. Today, everything is stitched together in the cloud. And if you don't like the cloud backup service you're using to protect your data, you can simply subscribe to another cloud backup service and end your current subscription, change partners pretty effortlessly. It doesn't bring everything else down. The concept is loosely coupled. The fact that you're changing one thing doesn't necessarily bring down everything else. In fact, it can happen pretty much in a vacuum. There are businesses that are basically an office with a few people. They have manufacturing externalized, and they have a system to communicate with manufacturing. They have logistics outsourced. They have accounting, marketing. Literally every department is outsourced. And if any one of them is not doing the job, they simply go and sign up another one and then phase the old one out. That's agility. In an organization that has 100 people, and then within a year you get to 10,000 people, the ability to scale your systems with that amazing growth requires tremendous agility. So when you're thinking about digital transformation, think about agility. Think about how to avoid locking yourself in to any one particular anything. Give yourself that open field, that flexibility to move from solution to solution as you need to. Hopefully, within a few changes, you'll find a perfect combination that works well for a long time to come. Another area of opportunity in digital transformation is the concept of software. How do we get our software? And it used to be that if you wanted custom software that did what you do, the way you want to do it, you would have to go find a qualified software developer who knew how to code and had a team of people that could code. And you had to tell them what you would want to do. They would give you a functional specification to make sure that they understood it. And once you approved that, they would start coding. And they would keep coding and coding and coding. And eventually, you'd have an application that did what you wanted to do. Today, we talk about low code or even no code. And what do I mean? What I'm showing you on the screen right now are a partial list of products you can use to create applications with either little or no code whatsoever. The concept is, if you know your process, simply move tiles around on the screen to assemble your process the way you do it, and that will create the software you need to run it. No developer, no code. It's quick. It's incredibly agile. If something doesn't work quite the way you want it to, change it, move the tiles around. This whole concept of agility is becoming an expectation. And with all these products out there to help you do it, and this is only a partial list, you can find a product that's very comfortable for you to, you have an idea in the morning, you've got an application by afternoon. So this concept of agile development has changed completely. Agile used to describe a methodology of building software in sprints, and then making sure you had what you wanted, and then another sprint, and then another. Now, agility speaks to the idea that you can have an idea and you can express that idea in software in tremendously little time. Tremendously little. This is taking us on a really remarkable journey, a journey that begins in deep space. Those of you who have seen the movie 2001: Space Odyssey will remember the monolith. And those of you who read all of Arthur C. Clarke's books in that series know that he explored what that thing might be. For us, the context is software. It used to be that when you wrote software, you took all your code and put it into one monolithic block of code, a program, and you ran that program on a platform. And God forbid anything went wrong inside that block of code, the whole thing usually came crashing down. If you had thousands of users connected, they were now sitting there twiddling their thumbs. Monolithic software development had its shortcomings, to say the least. Well, now we're moving away from the monolith. We've knocked over the monolith, and instead we're using cloud-native development techniques. Cloud-native. Instead of a big block, a big monolithic block of code, we're writing little tiny microservices of code. Each little thing that the software might do is available in a microservice. And these microservices are packaged into containers that also have all the resources they could possibly need to function. Libraries, printing resources, storage resources, whatever they needed to do their job, packed into the container with them. This container is tremendously portable. Using orchestration software like Kubernetes, you can take this container that you built with maybe Docker, and you can transport it anywhere in your network. This is why we refer to it being cloud native. It was developed to function in the cloud, moving from cloud center to cloud center, from cloud server to cloud server, from user to user, from core to edge and back again. Very, very lightweight. If something went wrong with one of your microservices, it would simply be destroyed and reinstantiated. A whole new copy of it would be made. So it's very resilient. It doesn't go down very often in any way, shape, or form. This is ideal for those companies who are trying to create a DevOps culture. DevOps brings together the developers and the operators to develop the software faster so they can create CI/CD, continuous improvement through continuous delivery. I've also heard it said continuous development, continuous deployment. So it's CI/CD. That goal suggests that the developers write code, the operators deploy it, The users start using it, the operators get feedback from them, bring it back to the developers, and the developers improve the code. They give that improved code to the operators who bring it out and deploy it. They go to the users, get the feedback, bring it back to the developers. That cycle continues over and over and over again in an iterative process of improving the software. There are companies doing that cycle, hundreds of times per day. We're not talking about an upgrade every 6 months. We're talking about dozens or hundreds of times per day. The only way to move that fast is using microservices running in containers. There's no other way. You can't conceive of recoding and recompiling a monolithic block of software hundreds of times a day. It's not possible. But with microservices running in containers, it is. So we can completely transform even the way we develop huge applications that involve multiple associates, connections between suppliers, transporters, customers, other affiliates, and allowing them to all work together. This concept of cloud native opens the door to digital transformations we never thought of before. And it's becoming more and more adopted. Many companies are reimagining their monolithic software and redeveloping it in microservices running in containers. They've had another assist, though, along the way. And that assist is the whole concept of artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, and cognitive technologies. All of a sudden, we're in a place where we can allow the machines to make certain decisions to evaluate. I'll give you an example. There's a recommender systems. This is one of my favorite examples because it's so useful. You run a recommender system in a company. It has data on all of your products. It also has collected data through social media, through past purchases, through all kinds of sources about all of your customers. The artificial intelligence engine now compares your products against your customers and decides which of your products would be best to recommend to each of your customers. And because it's automated, it even sends out marketing material and starts the communication cycle with customers about products that they would probably be most interested in. That's a simple application, but it illustrates what can start to happen when the machine can do some thinking. And we're at the dawn of artificial intelligence. There's so much more that's going to develop over time. But I would be remiss if I didn't talk about looking at artificial intelligence as a way to achieve digital transformation and as a way to enhance digital transformation. And keep your eye on this whole segment of technology because there's going to be more and more possible with the passing of time. Another thing that I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up, of course, would be security. Cybersecurity. I was on a session earlier today where somebody questioned whether or not the cloud was really secure. And that was a question I heard thousands of times per day 20 years ago. Today, I seldom hear anybody ask the question because they know that the big cloud providers, they're not going to risk their business on a security mishap. They invest heavily, more heavily than any of us. They invest very heavily in security. So I think that cloud is clearly a safe space to know that the right investments are being made to protect your data. Another thing that happened recently, though, again, we sent everybody home to work. And so our threat surface changed. Rather than being one massive surface surrounding our operations, our threat surface is now distributed across hundreds of homes, thousands of homes, tens of thousands of homes. And so we need to protect each one of those nodes. Try to imagine doing that the way we've traditionally done it, by putting a firewall and an intrusion prevention system and other kinds of automation into each employee's home. 10,000 employees, 10,000 firewalls get deployed. It's daunting, to say the least. There had to be a better way, and there is indeed a better way. It's Secure Access Service Edge. Originally envisioned by Gartner, it balances the potential of digital transformation against the risks involved in digital transformation. SASE combines the management of the network that connects them all together with the security required to protect that network. It's centralized. You can manage it from a central point, and it can protect as many nodes as you have, distributing that security using the network, and incorporating all the things we talk about today on both sides of that equation, on the network side as well as the security side, including zero trust, which is extremely popular to talk about these days. SASE is it's also in its infancy, but when you're building your digital transformation, you want to make sure it's secure. You don't want to have a disaster. And SASE may be exactly the formula for helping you do that. So incorporate your thinking about security into your thinking about where you're going to find opportunities to create digital transformations. From a market perspective, more and more we're hearing people talk about one specific application that they're focusing a lot of digital transformation work on, and that is customer experience. It's got its own little name, DX for CX. And if I were saying it, it would be DX for CX and EX, because employee experience is every bit as important as anything to customer experience. Here, we're going to completely transform the way in which we interact with customers. Yes, we're going to give them an omni-channel experience. They can get in touch with us on a mobile device, on a telephone, on the web. You can talk to your television these days. They can even actually show up at a brick and mortar store. How crazy. But beyond that, we're learning more, and we're having our artificial intelligence systems learn more about each customer and learn more and more about that customer so that they can use that to improve the experience. What they're collecting, of course, is data. And data is at the heart of digitally transformed customer experience. For it to be an optimized experience for a customer, it really has to be personalized just for that customer. That personalized experience will do a better job of earning you customer loyalty than anything else you can do. So collect the data. Search them on social media. Find out everything you can about them. Let your systems do it. Your systems can do this better than you can as a person. So, let your systems transform the way you learn about your customers, and then let them transform the way you interact with your customers. Again, those of you who have been at some of my sessions know that every time I talk about data, I talk about data being the new bacon, because people value data so very highly. Some people say data is the new oil. The one thing we know for sure is that data only makes money when it's in motion. Data only makes money when it's in motion. Data sitting in a hard drive doesn't generate anything except risk. Data moving from a supplier to a customer for lease, for rent, or for purchase makes that supplier money. Data being used to fine-tune the way in which we communicate with a customer is moving between us and the customer. and it has the potential to make us money. So as you're planning and as you're searching for places in which to create your digital transformation opportunities, start with people and the data they use, because that's really the heart of why we do everything we do in IT. And with that, David, I'm going to ask you if we have any questions.
We certainly do, Howard. And first, congratulations on a great presentation.
Thank you.
And we do have some questions. Actually, one is from the first session, but it wasn't answered, and it talks about software, which you also discussed. So let's take a shot at that. Wahid from the audience asks, what's your view on every business is a software business first, regardless of the vertical/business?
Well, that is a great advertisement from somebody who's selling software tools. Every business is a software business. I would say that it's true that at this point in time, every business runs on software. Software is involved in keeping that business running. If it's not software in use inside the company, which is very rare, I think almost every company uses software. It's software that's being used to connect that company to its suppliers, its customers, and others. So it's inescapable. And it suggests, and this is not the way business people always think, it suggests that if you want to make an improvement to your business, you may want to start by improving your software. So in that respect, yeah, every business is a software business.
Okay. Moving right along, the next question comes from Michael. You might need your own webinar to answer this one, Howard. Michael asks, advice on setting a proper cloud foundation from premises to cloud that is scalable without taking too much technical debt.
There are probably a million ways to answer that. Incurring too much, well, first of all, you mentioned on-premise. Stop thinking about on-premise. The more technical debt you accumulate is probably because you're installing things on-premise still. One of the wonderful things about cloud is that when you see a problem, rather than collect technical debt, you make a change. That's that whole agility concept. A cloud foundation, wow. A cloud foundation. You know, we've been giving a lot of presentations recently about multi-cloud and hybrid cloud and what's the difference between the two and blah, blah, blah. And last week I did one of them, and in that presentation I said, what's the big deal? I think that you need to start shopping for a management platform rather than shopping for a cloud service. I say that because I think that the thing that enables us to get the most out of using multiple cloud services, and by the way, I don't know anybody who only uses one cloud service. That was never the way it was intended, and I don't think anybody could do it. You know, you get your productivity suite one place, your backup software, your backup capability from another place, you get high availability from yet another place. Any service you want, there are tons of providers vying to provide it to you. And even the hyperscalers, Amazon, Azure, and Google, and IBM, and a few others, they all duplicate each other's services extensively. And so they're trying to bring all the different services in-house, but there's still a difference. It's like, why do you go to department stores? Because they don't necessarily have what you want at one of them, so you go to another. Same is true with the hyperscalers. There's no reason you shouldn't get something from Amazon, something from Azure, something from Google, if the best of breed choice is in those different environments. The challenge is to manage all of it in the context of everything else. And so it's the cloud management platform that really redefines what you do. To answer your question, Mike, I would hunt for that first.
Okay, moving right along. Next question in the Q&A box reads, do you recommend bringing in an outside consultant to help with the digital transformation? If so, why?
When I was in that business, one of the things I told customers all the time is that new is what we do for a living. You're going to do an implementation of new software once. And if you're going to do it yourself, well, you're going to have people trained for that. That means not only are you going to spend on the training and you're going to spend on travel and whatever else that takes, you're going to spend having those people out of action for a period of time. And they're never going to use those skills again more than once. So I definitely recommend outsourcing implementation services, deployment services. Anything you're going to do once, have somebody else do it. Don't waste your people's time learning how to do something they're never going to do again. The other thing, I alluded to it earlier, and I'm really glad you asked that question, whoever asked it. Thank you. One of the big values of the IT channel, it's chock full of consultants whose life revolves around keeping in touch with everything that's going on in technology. Nobody in business really has the time to do that. Even if you're in the IT department of your business, you hardly have time to track all the different technologies that are coming out from all the different companies and the Open Systems Foundation and all these different sources. So the good thing about an IT consultancy is that that's what they do for a living. And you can tap into their knowledge. What you have to do is you have to find one who you feel comfortable can interpret your business, can understand your business well enough to know which technologies are really applicable and which ones just aren't right for you. That's not easy to find. That takes some heavy-duty conversations, some serious vetting. But I would maintain that it's worth the investment of time to find that partner who can help you decide which products, and also who can suggest new technologies that are coming out that could enable another transformation that maybe you hadn't even thought of. So, yeah, I think working with those outsiders, the challenge is finding ones that are really talented and understand business as well as they understand technology.
Okay. Here's an interesting question from Rob. How important is it to have external players in place early in the transformation process, i.e. part of the planning phase along with internal stakeholders? Or is that a thing to be contemplated as you go? And I guess that depends on who those external players are. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
What do you think, Howard?
Well, if they're doobies, you can just hire them as you need them to deploy desktops or something. I don't know what kind of outsiders you would need toward the end of the process. But digital transformation, I said that digital transformation is about people. It's fueled by data. And some of that data requires significant expertise. You may not have that expertise in-house. If you're bringing in outsiders for anything, it may be business process re-engineering experts who can help you determine the best way to improve your processes through automation. They're only valuable at the beginning of the process. If they're not there at the beginning and you suddenly call them in the middle of the end to answer questions or help advise you, they don't know what's gone before. So I don't know that there is a geek squad for business process re-engineering, but I would say bring in those outside consultants, just like you bring in an outsider to do the installation because it's something you're only going to do once. If you're not going to hire that expertise into your company, bring in an outsider. Let them help you develop what you need to develop, and then move on.
Okay, well, it looks like that's all the questions we have time for. Thanks again, Howard, for an excellent presentation and answering those questions.
It's my pleasure, David, and thank you to everybody who paid attention out there and wasn't simultaneously emailing. I hope that this gave you a lot to think about in terms of how you're going to plan your digital transformation.
Okay, everyone else, stay tuned. We're going to take a short break and be back at the top of the hour for our third session, Hottest Third-Party Products for Achieving Digital Transformation, and the giveaway of our Oculus Quest 2 virtual reality headset, for which you must be present to win. So hang tight. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to our third session. Becky, please take it away.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Happy Friday. If you don't know me, my name is Becky Nagel. I'm the Vice President of Web here. And I'm so happy to welcome you back to our Digital Transformation Summit. We're really excited about this summit, and we're really excited to be bringing you this how to third-party products for achieving digital transformation session. So this is something our editors really worked hard on to bring you the summit and come up with it. So we're really hoping you're enjoying it. Some quick notes before we start. One, we want to really thank you again for attending. We know it takes time out of your day, and we're hoping we're giving you what you wanted and get that information that you need. Two, make sure that you stick around to the end of the summit, not only because that's when we're going to be giving away that Oculus Quest 2 virtual reality headset. You don't have to do anything. It's a random drawing of everybody who's on the call, but you do need to be on the call in order to have your name eligible for that drawing. So make sure you stay on to the end, number one, for that. But number two, also because we do have a survey, and we want to know what you think. We're going to ask you what you liked, how helpful you thought the information was. You can also, there's points in there, you can put in feedback and say, hey, do this, do that. Anything you guys want, let us know. The editors read every single comment, and it helps us plan the future events. So please, please, please stay on to the end. You'll be eligible to win that prize, but you'll also be able to take that survey, let us know what you think, and it helps us plan our future events. So, and speaking of future events, we want to thank our sponsors sincerely, Mirantis, A10 Network, and Red Hat. And you guys probably have heard me say this before if you've been here before, but we cannot do these events without our sponsors. They're underwriting the content. They allow us to bring you this event, and we're thrilled that we have such wonderful sponsors in. It's lovely for us to have them, but it's also lovely that they're wanting to come out and support the community and to do this and to allow us to bring you these events. So please show your thanks. Go ahead and download those resources that are in the console. Sign up for those demos. Go follow them on Twitter. Anything you can do to show your thanks. Let them know that you appreciate it and that you want to have future events like this one. So thank you again to Mirantis, A10 Network, and Red Hat for supporting the community and making sure that this information gets out to our readers. So with that, we're going to go ahead and take it away for the third session. And I'm thrilled to announce our first speaker. We have Michael Ward, Director of Product Marketing for Cloud Infrastructure at Mirantis. Michael, please take it away.
Sure, thanks, Becky. Pleased to be with everyone today and have the chance to share with you Mirantis' vision of the data center of the future being cloud native. So with that, we'll get going. Hopefully these slides are coming through. So we'll start off with the question of what is a data center. When we think of a data center, some will think of it as a large building holding racks of servers and networking gear and various support equipment that delivers the power and cooling for all that gear. Others may think of it as a bit more abstractly, as a place where we store our data and perform our compute functions on that data. But the concept of the data center is evolving. No longer is it bound to the confines of a physical building. Historically, we owned our data centers and they were located on-prem. But as we move to the cloud, the question raises, do we still need to own our data centers? The arrival of edge computing has changed the way we think about our applications and, in turn, about our data centers. We need solutions that allow us to locate our data and compute where it's best located, be that on-prem, on the edge, or in the cloud. And this is rapidly driving the demand for hybrid and multi-clouds. So why does hybrid cloud matter? What meaningful benefits and outcomes does it deliver? First, it provides you with leverage, enabling you with choice and leverage over being locked into a single cloud or hosting provider. It delivers the benefit of efficiency. You have the ability to place your workloads in locations with the best economic efficiency in terms of pricing as well as available resources. The hybrid cloud enables risk mitigation. By spreading your workloads across providers, you lower and spread your risk profile from both an economic and a technology standpoint. Next, the ability to select across multiple providers allow you with more options in terms of placing your workloads closer to your customers. And this in turn can open up new markets and allow you to deliver new services to your customers. And finally, this choice gives you control over your platform to ensure regulatory or jurisdictional compliance for the location and control of your data and compute needs. So how does the concept of cloud native fit into all of this? First, cloud native is built on the concept of a microservices application architecture. The concept of decomposing your application into smaller microcomponents, which can then be dispatched across multiple compute locations. This is critical as the need for application mobility is key to leveraging choice. Workloads need to be hosted where they are needed, not just where the data centers happen to be. Certain parts of your application may need to be located close to your users, on the edge to ensure lower latency, whereas other parts, perhaps containing sensitive data, may need to be located on-prem, where you have more direct control over security. Containers and Kubernetes are becoming de facto standards as the building blocks to build and deliver applications in this manner in a cloud-native way. And open source is enabling this to be done quickly while setting high standards for quality and functionality. So let's talk for a moment about open source and its impact on the cloud. Open source is critically important to the success of cloud-native approaches. A vast majority of businesses use open source software today, with many not even realizing how deeply it is embedded in their businesses. Open source enables speed, enabling developers and operators to deliver new applications and services faster than ever before. No longer does every company need to develop the foundational software which is required, but does not deliver unique, differentiating, competitive value to their business. It is true that open source development is inherently selfish, with contributors driving the community for solutions that help them, but in the collective, we all end up benefiting. Now, using open source does come with its own challenges. Challenges such as choosing the right components for the specific needs from all the various projects out there. Knowing that the open source software is robust and of production quality and will scale to your needs. Ensuring what you have deployed is secure and that it stays that way. And then the challenge of having the right skills on board to deploy and maintain these solutions. So as we at Mirantis look forward to the future, what do we see unfolding? We see a world in which compute is everywhere, no longer restricted to your private data center or to one cloud, but where it needs to be, when it needs to be, in the local on-prem data center, a cloud data center, on the edge, or perhaps even in your hand. We see portable workloads, ones that are truly portable, able to move across computing platforms as well as hosting environments, taking advantage of technologies that allow them to run on any available platform. We see a world where workloads run closer to where they're needed, where the applications themselves have an inherent understanding of the user's needs related to factors such as security, latency, or performance. And most importantly, we see a world built upon open ecosystems, open standards that enable developers to easily consume and deploy services across these many providers, locations, and solutions. So what is our approach to this new cloud-native data center at Mirantis? To deliver upon the cloud-native data center of the future in an open-source, hybrid, or multi-cloud model, we see the following key requirements. Applications must be infrastructure agnostic. They must be able to run on the infrastructure of choice, but also be able to be moved real-time across infrastructures. There is a requirement for a centralized resource directory to provide one source of truth for the infrastructure resources available to you at that time. And then the ability to manage your hybrid multi-cloud infrastructure all from a single pane of glass. There must be a common API across these disparate infrastructures to abstract your applications from any of the unique nuances of the specific providers. And the platform must be open source based to ensure the ability to move rapidly in this cloud-native world. It must be simple and intuitive to use. It also must allow for self-service, to allow those that desire direct management and control to do so, but it should allow for the infrastructure to be fully operated and fully managed by others for those who wish to focus their precious, limited IT and development resources on building business-differentiating applications, not building and running their infrastructure. So Mirantis has delivered on these requirements with our Mirantis Flow offering, a cloud-native data center as a service. Mirantis Flow combines various Mirantis products, such as Mirantis Container Cloud and Mirantis Kubernetes Engine, both built from open source technologies, which we have then hardened and validated to ensure reliable deployments, to provide an environment that allows developers to rapidly deliver modern, cloud-native applications built around containers and Kubernetes, and to do so across their choice of cloud infrastructure, from on-prem, hosted bare metal, or public cloud providers. To complement this, we have included products such as Miranta's Secure Registry that ensures the highest levels of security and data integrity of their applications, tools that enable a modern, secure software supply chain, and then to ensure that you have the needed visibility into your infrastructure with tools. We provide tools such as Lens and Stacklight. For organizations which are not yet all in on cloud native, we also uniquely provide the ability to bridge their legacy environments with their container-based infrastructure as they work to transition towards a cloud-native world. And most importantly, providing the ability to do this all from a single pane of glass for deployment, monitoring, and maintenance. We then wrap all of this with Miranta's leading OpsCare and OpsCare Plus support and managed service offerings, giving organizations the choice of a co-pilot support experience or a managed service for their deployments. So in conclusion, Cloud Native is placing new and evolving requirements on how we think about, deploy, and manage our data centers. We must now think of data centers not as a physical entity, but as a service that we consume. We must think about them more as a broad collection of resources that deliver the right services with the right characteristics at the right place in the right time. And we must think about how we leverage open source technologies to make all of this possible at the speed of modern business. With Miranta's Flow, we're delivering the cloud-native data center as a service of the future today. Thank you. And with that, Becky, I'll turn it over. Do we have any questions?
We definitely do. And guys, we have time to take a couple more. So go ahead and get your questions in the box. If we don't have time to take it, we're going to get those questions over to Michael. So again, any questions you have, whether on the presentation or right when we're asking questions now, get them in. If we don't have time, we'll get them over to Michael. So, but let's go ahead and start with this one that's come in. Why is it important to provide a common API to access infrastructure resources? So good question.
Sure, yeah, definitely a good question. As we look at the variety of cloud infrastructure platforms available and the choices out there for application and developers to run their software upon, each of those infrastructures have some variation in capabilities, features, and function, and programming models. So it's important that that difference and those nuances of those differences be abstracted from the application to ease the ability to write an application that then can be very quickly and easily moved across the various infrastructures from one private or one public cloud provider to another or back onto the on-prem infrastructure.
Okay, here's another question. Does a cloud-native data center solution need to worry about support for virtualization?
So the short answer there would be yes. We see with many of the clients that we engage with that they're coming from an environment with large virtualization deployments, and they're making that transition over into a container-based cloud-native world. The reality is some of those applications will never be fully transitioned into a containerization environment, and they will stay in a VM-based application. And therefore, to simplify the management, deployment, and ongoing maintenance for the IT teams, it's critical that they have the ability to both monitor and manage their existing virtualization environment from the same pane of glass or the same interfaces as they can and do with their new modern cloud native environment. So we feel this a very important part that they can bring both of those worlds together from a common infrastructure and simplify their lives in that way.
Okay. Here's a question that came in. Are there particular industries that are riper for containers and microservices? For example, financial services versus shipping and warehousing, or what have you found working with this day in and day out?
Sure. I think all of those listed are actually great candidates for moving to containers and microservices. It's perhaps a bit less about the industry itself and more the nature of driving the application side. In the financial space, We have multiple clients in that domain that are leveraging containers to sort of decompose their workloads and also move a lot of processing closer to their customers. When we talk about the shipping and warehousing, I think it's a great example to talk about some of the trends that are emerging in edge computing, where there's lots of data, and you think about what's happening with the Internet of Things and all the sensor technologies and all the data that's being created and the processing around that may need to happen at the edge. And if I think about a warehouse perhaps as an edge point where a lot of that processing can happen, but then that has to be coordinated and managed back from a central location across the broader infrastructure that shipping and warehousing entity may have. So I think those are certainly great applications where parts of the broader inventory management system may be held back in the cloud in a common point, but some of the more real-time data processing and tracking can happen on the edge and out at the actual warehouses themselves. So I think those are both perfect industries that would fit in this.
Right, and there's a lot of industries. I mean, like in medical, all sorts of industries right now that are looking to balance those workloads and make sure that they get wherever they need to be the most efficient place possible. I mean, that's part of this whole digital transformation, right? I mean, making exactly. And this allows for that. Okay,
exactly.
And then I know that your website is Mirantis.com. Is that the best place to go if someone wants to get their hands on the product, get a free trial, or get a demo? What's the best way that our readers can go about that?
No, absolutely. We'd encourage you to go to www.Mirantis.com. We have free trial options available for all the different products, Mirantis Container Cloud, for those looking for broader management of multi-cloud container ecosystems, as well as the individual products like Mirantis Kubernetes Engine, our Kubernetes offering, and then also Mirantis OpenStack for Kubernetes, which brings the virtualization portion into the world.
Well, we have time for one more quick question, if you can answer it quickly. How do you work with higher education sector and the data, which is very complex?
I guess I'm not 100% sure on the context of that question, but with the Mirantis offerings, we are able to provide the container management solutions and applications such that you can deploy your application. So we don't actually directly manage the data. That's something that you would do and write your applications. But we're providing the infrastructure to which you can use Kubernetes and the other tools around that to deploy your applications across the different compute services and obviously different cloud environments that you may wish. But certainly happy to take a follow-up and dive into that discussion more deeply.
Great. We'll get that over to you so we can do that. Again, guys, feel free to go to Mirantis.com, check out the software there. Michael, thank you so much for being with us today. We really, really appreciate it.
Very happy. Appreciate you having us.
Have a good one. Thank you so much. And now we're going to go ahead and move on to our next presenter in the session. And I'm thrilled to welcome Paul Nicholson, Senior Director of Product Marketing at A10 Networks. Paul, please take it away.
Right. Thank you, Becky. All right. So today I'm going to be talking on a similar topic to the rest of the people, but I'm going to take it to a slightly different angle because I'm going to talk about digital resiliency because I'm sure to a lot of you people out there that you're trying to make sure that you can provide the right services to your users. So when I'm talking about digital resiliency in the vein of digital transformation, it's one of those things which we found is essential, especially in the last couple of years, whether it's COVID or it's attacks against infrastructure. Making sure that your services are always available and ready is a key consideration, just like it says in this IDC quote. And this has actually got more difficult as we move into new technologies because there's more things for the IT departments out there to manage and more things to look at. So looking at the digital resiliency, we break into 4 different buckets, and I'll touch on these during the presentations. So we really try and think about automation and agility to make systems easier to operate. We talk about security and zero trust because it's a good framework and architecture with zero trust to be able to frame up the security discussion. User experience is always important as well, whether it's to a website which is selling tickets or booking hotel rooms. The user experience has to be good in today's world. And then there's always the wild cards out there. So there's always change catalysts out there, whether it's technology or whatever it might be, which is going to have to figure into your plans as you go forward. So let's look at 4 of the top trends here, which I'll go into, which is leveraging hybrid cloud more effectively, the CI/CD process or continuous integration and delivery, hybrid cloud management, and then we've got some tips on some of the modern technologies which can make this easier. And also we'll finish up with talking about zero trust itself. So first of all, let's look at leveraging cloud effectively. And when we look at the infrastructures today, and even you heard in the last presentation, there's cloud native options and containers. There's also legacy environments out there, whether it's hardware appliances or other infrastructure which you have to manage. So there is a challenge today with managing those disparate application delivery and security infrastructures. And this is in some ways got more complicated because if you go to AWS or Azure, and you're also running, like most people today, in a hybrid environment with on-premise data centers, you actually might have a different product in each one of those instances, which you have to manage. So it's basically 3 times the systems you have to manage, where if you're just running a data center, it might be 1. So trying to bridge that gap to modernize and simplify the environment is also key, because that can relieve the burden on staffing, training, and also help you meet those compliance mandates out there, because they don't simply go away just because you're in a cloud or you're running in a container. So we have a hybrid application services blueprint, which talks through, and I'm not going to cover all of this today, all the types of modernization and some of the main considerations which we hear from our customers. So for example, one of the factors, and I'll go through the 3 actually, which are highlighted here. One of the factors often people want to talk about is making sure that they have the same security situation when they move to a cloud environment. So just because you move to a cloud doesn't mean those compliance requirements go away. So for example, if you have a web application firewall which is running in the cloud, you want to make sure you can push the same policy out as you might have on premise as well. Those requirements don't go away. Another big thing is about capacity and flexibility. Licensing has long been a problem because, with some organizations out there, you have to buy individual licenses for different types of deployments out there, maybe container or hybrid or cloud. So being able to have flexible and portable license capacity, which you can slice and dice the capacity out there, is something which we find very important to our customers, but I think also people are considering when they're buying solutions out there. And then also centralized visibility and reporting. I'll talk more about this later, but this is a good way to help with automation beyond some of the traditional automation discussions which are out there, because it can just make, put the data in a much easier at-a-glance way of understanding it. Now, going into one of those areas, which was also on the slide, is, as I was mentioning earlier, is continuous integration and delivery. So with this, what we're talking about is being able to push code out to the different, say, web properties out there. Now, the interesting thing about this is it's often talked about in that context, but there's also the underlying infrastructure which needs to support it. So when you're thinking about these code pushes out, they might be to, pushing code out to additional servers to scale. So being able to have elastic auto-scaling as needed, in your on-premise environment or your cloud environment is key, because you might be running different web properties in different locations or different applications in different locations. So being able to tie that together both with the API support. For example, we have some customers who use the APIs to manage our solutions 100%. So they don't use command line, they don't use the GUI which we have available, but they use the APIs. But also having the underlying infrastructure which can scale with the business needs is also important as well. Now, on this similar vein, I want to talk about hybrid cloud management and operation flexibility very briefly. And I'm going to give a customer example. So we have Delta Dental of Michigan. And what was interesting with this scenario is they're running traditional application delivery controllers in their environment, but they also needed to help their DevOps department when they're pushing code to multiple web properties with millions of users and give them visibility, because obviously when they're pushing code out, they want to see how it performs, right? Is it working better? Is there a server error? And in a highly distributed environment, that can be awkward. And also, if you're using different form factors, you want to make sure that the organization isn't buying multiple different solutions and optimizing the cost as best they can. So they have a good quote in here, which is, they like to work smarter, not harder. And one of the reasons that they managed to do this was by deploying a solution which gave, which the IT department was able to control, but also give the functionality to that other business group out there, which was obviously essential for their growth. And by having visibility, so for example, with our Harmony controller, instead of just seeing the number of connections, to a particular website, they can actually, at a glance, see what's going on. When they push code out, they can see if servers aren't responding. If there's a 404 error, they can drill down into it and see, even what object is working or not working, right? So there's a lot of functionality in here. And it can also help with security examples as well, because if you're a college in New Mexico and you suddenly get, 1 million connections from, Africa, for example, that's highly unusual behavior. So you might have to take action with some policies. So, there's a lot of functionality in this, and this can be deployed out of the box. For example, most of our customers today, we get them to trial on a SaaS-based option for this. So that way, the setup time is reduced. So again, it helps with that ability to be agile. Now I'm going to switch gears and talk about one of the other areas which I was mentioning earlier in the introduction, which is implementing zero trust. Because zero trust is actually, it's not just a security framework, it's also a good communication tool within an organization. And the idea is fairly simple. It's basically never trust, always verify. With the disappearing perimeter, threats can come internally as well as externally. So the idea is to eliminate the implicit trust for every device, user, network, and application flow out there. And we know it's gaining steam. In the survey from Gatepoint Research, a Pulse report, 59% of organizations said they were implementing a zero trust policy. So it's definitely a good framework, and not just from a security point of view, but also to communicate with stakeholders within the organization. So I'm going to give another example here. So we have a very large retailer who basically was looking at improving their security. And one of the foundations, with Zero Trust is that you've got to be able to see what's going on to be able to make a security decision. So they just deployed a TLS visibility solution out there, which allowed their other security devices at scale to be able to see malware, ransomware, and also implement policy with their solution. Now, the interesting thing about this was they also deployed it on a solution we have with Dell Technologies, and this kind of relates to what I was talking about earlier, because it's very flexible. Because even though it's deploying on a hardware appliance, it's actually a virtualized solution, so they can slice and dice the instances running on there. They could actually run application delivery controllers or the security solutions as they see fit. So it definitely helps with that flexibility within their organization. But the main thing here was that they could give visibility to all their security devices and not, do it in a very efficient way. So as well as having a visibility for the security element, they can also do decryption once, create a secure decrypt zone, and also do it cost effectively. They don't have to overbuy other security appliances just to get that SSL functionality. And this is something that the NSA has also written about in different reports, saying do it once and do it well. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about, because this is also top of mind right now, because you're probably seeing in the news there's lots of talks about DDoS attacks. And, especially there's warnings out there from CISA and other organizations for organizations who are government-related or have critical infrastructure to watch out for DDoS attacks. And When we look at DDoS attacks, they're not very elegant. They're normally very obvious because a service or a site is unavailable. Now, having that protection out there is obviously to keep the availability and have that digital resiliency I was talking about, but it's also a good thing to have to make sure that it's not being used as a smokescreen for another attack. And examples of this have been around for many years. There's a classic example with Bank of the West, where $900,000 was taken from a bank account while a DDoS attack was going on, which was used as a distraction. Now, the problem with this is when we look at DDoS defenses, it can be very complicated to try and work out good or bad traffic. So nowadays, what we're seeing is organizations want to automate this, just like we said with the visibility solution, automating the security as well. And by using things such as machine learning and also baselining, to understand your network more completely, you can make sure that you have adequate defenses without your IT department or security department spending too much time on this, right? So, for example, the baselining and artificial intelligence is one piece, but there's also known bad threat lists which can be automatically downloaded into solutions today, such as the one that A10 offers as well. So having DDoS protection is key, and it can also help relieve capacity on your network. I remember, when we were talking to one service provider customer years ago, and they were saying, 80% of the traffic hitting their DNS infrastructure wasn't DNS traffic. So, this can help optimize those resources on the back end, as well as give the protection for your organization. Now, we just briefly touched on a few things, but we know technology is always evolving, whether it's TLS 1.3, if it's encrypted DNS traffic, whatever it might be. So there's many things which we also have to account for, with the changes out there to make sure we're resilient. Obviously, when we look at TLS, for example, or SSL as it's often referred to, Google gives higher rankings to organizations if they're more secure. So there's business reasons to keep up with these technologies often as well. But definitely modernizing the environment, automating it to make sure that organizations can optimize their resources is a key consideration. Now, I'll just talk very briefly about A10. As you can guess from the topics I was talking about, we have multiple solutions out there which cover application delivery, DDoS protection, and also traffic visibility, which are the things I refer to. We also have a number of solutions for service providers. And when we look at all the customers we have out there, we have over 7,000 customers and some of the biggest brands in the world, as you can see, reflected in this list. So if anything was of interest to you, definitely reach out to us. And I'll just end with some of the other resources we have and some of the advice that we often give out to organizations. So basically, when we talk about digital resilience and digital transformation, we do think if you're using technology which is a few years old, it's good to reevaluate to see how it can help your business, how you can optimize your IT resources, how you can do root cause analysis quicker, how you can find threats which you might not have realized are out there which are hitting your network. And then also, as I said, technology is always evolving. So planning for those technology shifts, whether it's going to TLS 1.3 or whether it's moving to containers, can your existing vendor support you moving from, say, a hardware appliance to a virtual appliance or even a container solution or a cloud solution, or do all of them at the same time, which is, in some of the larger organizations, what we definitely see. So we have a number of resources on our website which are also available. And I think with that, I'm almost on time. So, Becky, back to you.
Yeah, Paul, great presentation. Go ahead and leave that slide up. We're going to go ahead and let's go ahead. We'll just put that one up. Yeah, and we'll get those resources up there. So we're going to go ahead. I think we have time for a quick question or two, guys. If we don't have time for questions, get them in right now. If we don't have time for them to Paul, we'll get them over to them. This one, what app security do you have?
So the application security which we can provide, it could be, it's for multiple different, use cases. So, for example, on the application delivery controller, we can definitely do a lot around web security with a WAF, with application access management for authentication before you get to the apps, and also it can, effectively the application delivery controller can act as a bastion host, i.e. that no one can actually get through to your applications unless you authenticate and correctly go past it. Plus, also we have the DDoS protection and the SSL visibility solutions.
Great. And now, Paul, if readers want to get their hands, try on these, I know we have resources for them, but what is the very best way that they can go about doing that?
So the thing is, we obviously have a range of products there. So often, we find a lot of customers want to know how they can modernize and improve either their security or their website environment, or make that move to hybrid cloud environments. Right. So going to a10networks.com, you can go straight to a trial, but it's often good to have a consultation with a system engineer because they can walk you through what other customers have done. So you can leverage that experience if you contact us from the website at www.a10networks.com.
Okay, so a10networks.com, there's a contact us button, there's a free trial button, and they can start there. So, okay. Exactly. Well, great. Well, thank you so much, Paul. Again, guys, if we didn't have time to get your questions, go ahead and get them in. We're going to get them over to Paul, and we'll make sure you get your questions answered. Paul, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you, Becky.
Thanks. And now I'm thrilled to be announcing our third and final speaker for today's session. It's Gordon Huff, Technology Evangelist with Red Hat. Gordon, please take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gordon Huff, Technology Advocate with Red Hat. And over about the next 15 minutes, I'm going to take you through the state of digital transformation. And this will be primarily through the lens of various surveys that Red Hat has commissioned over the past few years. So first of all, what is digital transformation? The reality is it means different things to different people, but a good working definition that we like to use is that it's how many organizations describe their efforts to bring new technologies, processes, and culture together with shared purpose. And we've actually done some research on the digital transformation term. We sometimes do these language focus groups to see what terms resonate with decision makers. And digital transformation resonates with decision makers. So I know there's some people who are a bit cynical about it. I'll even show you a quote in a little bit. But I think it's a good working term for thinking about having this open architecture, culture, and processes that are associated with things like automation, things like cloud native development, things like hybrid clouds. I don't want to overemphasize the technology piece. Technology is certainly important here, just as if you think about something like DevOps, which is in some ways very similar in that it's about people and process, perhaps even more than it is about technology. Nonetheless, as in the case of DevOps, if you don't have the right technology underpinnings, things get hard. Things get harder. I mean, DevOps, for example, you don't need microservices. I guess you don't even need a CI/CD pipeline. But if you don't have those things, it's much more difficult to implement as a practical matter. And that makes digital transformation harder in some ways, because one of the things I like to say is that technology is easy. Okay, maybe it's not easy exactly, but it's relatively easy, whereas people are really hard, and then process is probably something in the middle. Now, this is from a Harvard Business Review survey from a few years back. And one of the things that some of the management magazines like to do is think about companies that are doing things well and that are being successful. What are they doing differently than other people? And these are really some pretty striking numbers. What are the key cultural characterizations of digital transformation? And collaboration, they're much more collaborative. These leaders are much more collaborative than others. They're much more transparent than others. They're much more adaptable than others. They're much more inclusive than others. They think about community a lot more than others. So this is really a pretty striking example of how the leaders in digital transformation are doing things differently from a cultural perspective. And these are some good quotes. I mean, to my earlier comment about cynicism around digital transformation, there's a quote from McKinsey that around December of 2019, so just before the pandemic really hit, was peak cynicism about digitization. If you think about the Gartner hype cycle, maybe we're kind of in the trough of disillusionment about digital transformation as some sort of marketing or management sort of buzzword. But then, pandemic hit, and here's a quote from Equinix. This year was a forced test of many things we had thought about but not tried. And at the MIT Sloan CIO, not symposium last year, but digital learning series, that was a very common theme I heard from many IT leaders that, this was on the back burner. It was something we thought we would try out one of these days, but then we didn't have any choice. And we were able to cut through the red tape a whole lot faster than we thought we would be able to. And then finally, a quote from E.I. Lilly, again, just emphasizing that the people, the culture, are always going to be the foundation of all this. If you don't have the people, if you don't have the culture part, you can have the best whiz-bang technology, you can hire the best consultants, but that's probably not going to get you where you need to be. So this is from our Global Tech Outlook survey that we've been running for about 8 years now in various forms. And one of the things we do with these surveys is we try to keep a lot of the questions the same so we can see where things go from year to year. It sort of builds up confidence that we're seeing something real here. It also lets us look for interesting trends over time. And when we did this report this year, which released late last year, this was what we found, and there weren't big changes here. And I don't like to over-interpret small changes, but again, we see improving collaboration to be critical to digital transformation success. Delivering IT services faster, because at some level that's what you're trying to do. Now, I will say that driving business outcomes went down a bit this year, and maybe statistically significantly so. If I had to guess or I had to interpret that, I'd sort of say that companies certainly still needed to make money and deliver good business results. But perhaps in the past year, that wasn't the overwhelming focus of their efforts. And we see this collaboration thing again and again, and I think it's really important. This is from our another survey that we ran, and we asked what is the top challenge to get a machine learning project specifically, the key emerging technology area. It's really what it probably lean two emerging technology areas that we've been seeing in these surveys: AI, machine learning, and edge/IoT being the other one. And, some of this is about technology, managing the tools and frameworks. But once again, collaboration across teams to get machine learning models into production, and getting IT to provision infrastructure, which is at least connected to people and process. And getting access to relevant data. Again, a lot of that is a process and collaboration issue. We hear a lot about data silos between groups in organization, and one group needs the data, the other one has it, and they don't know about each other. So that's pretty common. This is interesting. We also asked them about their cloud strategy, and this was interesting because we see basically different phases of digital transformation. And one thing before getting into the cloud part I'll mention is that we've definitely seen acceleration over the last couple years among digital transformation projects. A lot of people started saying that they're have been accelerating their digital transformation. And it's interesting is if you look at how the cloud strategy connects to those different sort of categories of digital transformation progress, if you would, there's, again, a really striking difference here. Those who are saying that they're really in good shape, they're transforming, they're accelerating, they have a leading digital transformation presence, they've got hybrid cloud strategies. And if you look down at people who don't have any plans to do digital transformation, they may be have plans, but they haven't started, that's more likely to be, primarily public cloud or private cloud, as opposed to more of a hybrid approach. And the other thing about hybrid, I think, in this context, is that hybrid also tends to indicate that there's been some thoughtful analysis of where workloads optimally run. Now, if we talk about what gets in the way of doing digital transformation, the leading thing here, which was up just a hair this year, because we've been seeing skill set, talent in these surveys for a number of years, but that's at the top there. I mean, again, people. It's not the technology that is really the problem or really the limitation here, but it's really having the people with the right skills, with the right motivations, with right talent. And we've seen this popping up again and again in a number of different surveys. And this isn't really a new thing with what sometimes gets called in popular press, the Great Resignation. This is something that we've really been seeing in technology sort of adoption and in process adoption for a number of years on all kinds of different axes. And we see it again. What is keeping you from adopting containers? Now, lots of companies are adopting containers, but again, we don't have the necessary skills for adoption. And I think a lot of this ends up speaking to things like talent development and training and the like, which I think a lot of companies end up giving lip service to, but they're not very good at actually allocating budgets and allocating people's time to do. And give another version of that slide that I showed earlier, just so, where are these digital transformation projects sitting? And, again, a smaller number are leading, a lot sort of put themselves in the middle category, transforming, and quite a few are accelerating, and basically about half said this was primarily being driven by the pandemic. We didn't see a huge difference this year compared to the prior year, but if I had to kind of interpret some of those numbers towards the bottom, people who had said they were stalled the previous year moved up into higher categories this year for the most part. Whereas those who hadn't really been doing much pre-pandemic, they're still not doing a lot. So I think that's sort of how I would summarize that data. The final point that I would like to make here, and I think this is important because we've seen this type of thing in a similar context around topics like enterprise open source adoption, for example, is that if you kind of look over on the left here against the folks with no plans or who are not that far along, why are they, what's their priority for digital transformation? And some of them say it's simplicity, but most of them are saying, hey, we want to save money. We won't cut our total cost of ownership. I mean, why else would you do a digital transformation project if not for that reason? Because that's really been a lot of the sort of historical driver for IT projects is cutting costs, saving money. IT is a cost center. We will spend as little on IT as possible. So why wouldn't we do a project to cut costs? Then, though, what comes out here is they get further along. They go emerging. They accelerate. And then finally go up to leading. It's like, well, yeah, we care about costs, but that's not our top priority for digital transformation. That's important. I mean, we have a budget and all that. But we're doing this to innovate. We're doing this to drive revenue. We're doing this to drive our top line. We're doing this to improve our customer experience. So the more you know about digital transformation, the more you shift away from this being something you're doing to save money, and the more you're doing it to innovate and drive your business forward. So thank you for your time.
Great presentation there from Gordon. Reminder to you guys, sorry about that little echo there. Reminder to you guys that you will get an email within 24 to usually 48 hours after this, and you're going to get the entire session emailed to you so you can watch it back. You can see all of these great presentations again and rewatch and get all this information again. So thanks again to Gordon. Now it's time for us to announce the winner of the prize. So the person that is going to take home the Oculus Quest 2 virtual reality headset is Ryan Wright with Bella and Canvas. Ryan, congratulations. Someone from our marketing department will be in touch soon to let you know how to claim your prize. So again, guys, please take the survey again. Thank you again so much to our sponsors, Mirantis, A10, Red Hat. Thank you all for staying with us and attending the session with us on this Friday, and I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.